It smells so bad.
First pair of shorts, underwear.
Yeah.
And
I didn't know he ever got around to
I
it.
think I bought them for him for Father's Day.
Oh, really?
And so I said, now go put them on. You know, we just busted on it all the time.
He'd
Well,
always
in a
want.
minute, he came prancing out.
Oh, really?
His old bird legs and that pair of shorts on. And Mama yelled at him, oh, she just because he was in his underwear in front of me. But oh, he just pranced in
Oh,
and out on the
you know,
shirt.
that my mother was so Victorian. You didn't come to the table except fully dressed. Now, my mother did wear a kimono sometimes, and they used to wear what they called a wrapper, and it was a kimono affair that tied up very well. You didn't expose your body, you know, you just didn't do it. And you never talked about bathroom habits, and ever, ever. And my mother would, I suppose, her hair, well, it might have been in braids or something, but they had what they called breakfast caps. And my mother never came to the table that she didn't have on her breakfast cap. And it was, very roughly and done up very Victorian. You've probably seen them in pictures.
Here's James.
And so they would have a wrapper and a ruffled cap. And nobody dared come to the table anything but fully dressed. You just didn't do it. But my dad wore long underwear. Listen, he had long underwear in '55 because we took him out to.
He didn't wear those shorts too much.
I don't think so because this was right after Mother died that weekend. We went out to San Angelo and took Papa with us and Lucy, and we stayed at the Joneses out there, and they put him in the room with Bob, and he slept in his underwear, and Bob offered him a pair of pajamas, and he said no, he didn't like it.
Well, I never will forget that pair of shorts. And he didn't have on anything, no shirt, no shoes, no anything.
I can
And he
imagine
came
that.
out, and out, we were all at the end of that back porch, you know, that room, and twisting and carrying on.
But you know, school, when I was a kid, the big ones were the ones that always got a drink at recess. The little ones, you know, would just shove back, they'd draw a bucket of water, and those that were big got a drink, and many a time we'd leave the well because the bell had rung to return to the room, and I'd go back in thirsty because the big kids didn't care about the little kids. And they hogged all the fresh water and they threw it on each other, and you know, kids will be kids, even back in those good old days.
I had one of these somewhere.
Wow.
But you know, kids from the country brought their lunch. People in town went home to eat. People in the country had good lunches. They packed them in Mary Jane syrup cans. And it made a nice lunch box for them. And they would come with good sausage and homemade biscuit. And often, my mother always gave us some fruit to have at recess. So we either had a banana or an apple or an orange or something. And that was for the 10 o'clock break. And I would trade mine for a sausage and a biscuit. Or I would trade it for a sweet roll that they made at home out of biscuit dough. That
You got a
they
pencil
put
anywhere?
lots of sugar and vanilla and perhaps a little milk. and it'd be kind of candied, and it would be biscuit dough, and it was just delicious. And they would sometimes put some spice on it. And
Wow.
sometimes I would trade my fruit for that. And I was bad about eating. In school I was being punished all the time because I was one of those funny eaters. I didn't really eat breakfast or food with it. And then I went to school and I was hungry.
Mhm.
And so if I hadn't traded my orange or apple off, I was under the desk eating it.
Oh my God.
And I was always caught. And sometimes I had to sit on the dunce stool with the dunce cap
Did
on.
they really have that then?
They really did have it.
The-
You got a pencil somewhere?
Uh,
I found
Oh,
some.
pencil, yeah,
Mhm.
right. Let me get one. And, or you had to just stand in the corner. Time out like you all do with color.
This is on my.
Oh, time out, you mean?
Or sometimes you had to walk up to the desk in front of everybody, hold out your palm and let the
Teacher slap.
Ruler.
get a ruler slap.
Mm-mm.
Or sometimes you had to stand up in front of everybody and you had a sign printed. I have been eating under my desk.
Oh my gosh. Well, it was, when we were in school, it was like for chewing gum.
Well, all kinds of things, and writing notes.
This
I was bad about writing notes after
Yeah,
I was big
yeah,
enough
or
to
just-
write notes.
This was Mary Martha Baker, who was born in Illinois to John Baker's first wife.
Yes, I right.
Now this is Maud Wood, but you've got written back here, Maud Wood, whose grandmother was oldest sister of Eliza Baker. That sister was Mary, who married, I wrote John King.
Oh, good, but that is my wood,
This
isn't
is
it?
Maud. She was a character too. But Mary Martha belonged to John Baker's first wife. I
Yes.
haven't found out who she is. I think she was a Neely also.
Well, it was customary in those days. The Bible says something about, if your brother dies and his widow is left, it's up to you to see that she's taken care of.
I don't know that this is out of McElwee.
You know?
It doesn't look like the picture I have.
I don't know.
But anyway.
Is that what I have on the back of it?
You said maybe McElwee, first wife of.
I don't know.
George.
I think I just,
It's made it in Corsicana, so.
Uh-huh.
But her parents started the Collins Street Bakery.
I know, I had all that information.
They have
I had a picture of her father, and he was really a very attractive man, all the time. But, and we camped out, and we also stayed in guest houses along the way, or
William B.
we stayed in a hotel in Walsenburg, no, Trinidad. We did have a hotel there.
Mm-hmm.
We had a tent on top of the Model T. Model T had a canvas top. It had on top of it this tent,
Folded up.
right? A tent that extended out from the car,
Mhm.
just a porte-cochere deal.
Mhm.
And we had cots, army cots. They were on the fenders. You could hardly get in and out of the car. Cars had fenders,
Right.
okay, and you could buy brackets that held stuff in there. We took dress-up clothes. We all had hats. My mama wore a big hat with a chiffon veil tied around her to hold the hat on.
I bet the air conditioning didn't work too well either, did it?
No, the air conditioning. And they had, what do you call them? Smocks that they
Mhm.
wore, dusters, that were like canvas or something in a kind of khaki color. But they were so hot they would have to crawl out of them because they just couldn't stand it anymore. And Joe would cry, and we'd have to stop ever so often and get out of the car and give him a respite from sitting on Mama's lap and
Give her a respite.
and let her have a respite. And there weren't any ice cold Coca-Colas or anything. We just, well, here we are, 3 kids in the back. We have a shotgun on one side of us. And my dad occasionally would stop at what are those things that Bill Burrows down in the groundhog place, and not gophers, they didn't call
Prairie
them
dogs.
prairie dogs. And but my dad would shoot a few of them, and we would walk around, and they were enormous. Oh, you couldn't see the boundaries of the things. They were that big. That's how big they were in West
town,
Texas.
Great,
Great cities
You saw
of
that,
them.
didn't you? At
Huh?
Vernon, did you see one at Vernon?
Lubbock.
And then we would get back in the car, and we had heavy rains on the way to Plainfield. My dad had a couple of wheat farms out there that he wanted to stop and see on our way to Colorado.
He had wheat farms out there?
Right. And Mr. Spence from Kent was his tenant that looked after the farming. And on one of them, he had 2. One was a small one. I think he just leased it out. But this Mr. Spence, who was related to the Spences in Kent and related to the Creases. Miss Creasy was a Spence. And so she was a sister to this man who lived on my daddy's farm. And so we had these rains. They had dry weather. And these heavy rains brought out little jumping frogs about this size by the hundreds. And it was like a plague. And we would stop and look at the little jumping frogs because the water had brought them out of their moist places way under the ground. And the road would get slick with the little dead frogs.
Oh my gosh. Now, when Papa would shoot the squirrels, the prairie dog critter, he just shot them just to shoot them. It wasn't for, y'all didn't eat them or anything like that?
No,
Okay.
no, he just wanted to practice his
Practices,
marksmanship.
okay.
And so,
And what time of the year was that?
this was in July.
Oh, wow. I can't imagine.
And we had to turn in way before dark at any place because the lights on the car weren't sufficient and reliable enough. And we had flats all the time, and we had our own repair service. And the tires were very skinny, and they had an inner tube that had to be patched constantly. And so you'd take the tire off, and then you would take this inner tube, and you had something that you stripped it over, and you kind of made the surface real smooth,
Right.
so you could put the patch on
Right.
it. And you had some glue, and you patched it, and then you blew it up with a hand pump, and you put it back on, and then you got on your way, and the road sometimes went right through people's farmyards. They didn't, there wasn't any big right-of-way like places are.
Mm-hmm.
It means that.
And,
This Jane.
oh, it is, Jane? And when we got to Plainview, we took a kind of an apartment in an apartment house. It was big and barny, not like a nice apartment house you would see now,
Mm-hmm.
and certainly no air conditioning, and not even electric fans. We just opened the windows wide. The nights were cool, though, in Plainview compared to Kent.
Mm-hmm.
And we stayed there, I think 4 or 5 days, and we went out to the farms and saw them, and then we drove on. And what we would do, as I say, some places we would pitch tent and spend the night in the cots. And then my mother would get up and we would cook breakfast. My dad would try to find a place where he could buy some milk, and we would have bacon that had been cooked in this big iron skillet, or no, we had a separate skillet, I guess, for that, because my mother always made biscuits. Made biscuits. This thing that he built on the back of the car made a table.
Like a chuck wagon.
Like a chuck wagon. And so it came down on with things like a little chain or something for hinges, and was out here, and so they would build a campfire. And now we did have something that was innovative, that was really very new. My dad being in the hardware business, we had one. It was a thing that you put over the fire, and like a grill.
Mm-hmm.
Had legs on it, and so you would put that down there, and you could put the skillet.
Pots and skillets.
Well, right, you could put the pots on, but now you put the biscuits down in the ashes,
Uh-huh.
and they cooked, and we made coffee in a big coffee pot right on the blazing fire, and it was like maybe, what do you call that, granite or something stuff, that took the fire very well.
Yeah, okay.
And so then it was, no strainer, no anything, coffee dumped down in there.
You just poured it very easily so you didn't get the grounds in your cup.
So we had campfire coffee and out of 10 cups, and we had 10 plates.
And of course, now Mama got all this
Now
flour,
Mama is dressed up in a corset,
and she's fixing
and
biscuits.
she fixes all of this stuff and takes care of a baby that's a little more than a year old.
And then you had to wash all that stuff.
And
put
then all
it
that
back.
stuff had to be washed.
You didn't just pull into McDonald's and get a
no.
Egg McMuffin and
We
go,
didn't go
right?
into water that was available. It was, you had to do it sparingly, about like soldiers would,
Right. Well, the more you talk, the more it sounds like the things that we did in the Army and
That's
basic
right.
training.
That's
We
right.
had metal skillet
That's
things,
right.
and
And you ate out of it.
we ate out of it.
You cooked in it and you ate out of
Right.
it.
And
Right.
when we got through, we washed them very
That-
carefully and put them back in the tank.
Because you had only a certain amount of water for shaving,
Mm-hmm.
bathing.
Well, we'd use our steel pot, the helmet.
Right.
We'd put water in there, and you take a bath in there and
Right.
shave in it and
Uh-huh.
everything, in
Right.
a gallon of water or
Right.
less.
Well, that's the kind of living we had. And my dad just loved it. And of course, my mother tolerated it.
Now, how long were you? Y'all went from Plainview up to?
We were gone about 3 weeks, I guess, 3 or 4 weeks, until the end of July.
Now, how fast would y'all travel out on the open road?
I have the itinerary if I can find it.
Well, that's all right. I
I've
just
got a
wondered
thing
about.
about it, that half on the road
Right,
about the
uh-huh.
trip
I mean,
to
would you get
Colorado.
on-
But
Right.
we didn't travel far on a day. And many of the roads had ruts, nearly 12 inches deep. And you had to, there wasn't much traffic you had to worry about. After we left, yeah, but if you got in a rut, you pretty well stayed there because there wasn't any way to get out. And unless you had somebody come and and pull you up. And so the ruts would diminish, until finally we'd be back smooth again. But for a long time, your whole deal would be guided by the rut.
Just
You
stay.
could just kind of sit back and be, on the pilot control.
Now, okay, so
Automatic control.
y'all got up into, you come up into Trinidad, or you go through Raton Pass,
We went to Clayton, New Mexico.
Clayton.
And then to Raton.
Mm-hmm.
And we went up the pass, and I've told you about that. There's several times that we tried to get up on the pass, only to be at the place up there, and the car would stall out. It
Because
just
it had a gravity flow.
it
didn't have
just
a fuel
simply
pump.
could not go any farther. So down we go, back to the filling station to see what was wrong, that our car couldn't climb that mountain. They'd kind of look at it and check everything again and make sure, and we'd start again. And so I think we did it about 3 times. And the last time the man said, that grade is a lot steeper than you believe it is. So what you have to do is get a running start.
Right.
Well, didn't it wind up having the back?
Well, I was gonna say, a lot of
Uh-huh.
times people backed up those things.
Oh, no,
Well,
nobody ever
now
told us
somebody
that.
told me about that and
Mhm.
said they had to back
Oh,
up.
really? Well,
Right.
we didn't back up. We backed down.
Wow.
We went all the way back. We were up high enough that the people in Raton looked like ants.
Mm-hmm.
And here we have to back down. Mother is screaming, "Oh, John, you're going to kill us all." Oh, John.
Oh,
and Dad would say, "Now, Mamie, just be quiet. Just be quiet. We're going to make it all right."
So you finally got over the pass.
So we finally got a running start and got up to the top, and it began to rain. And my mother started screaming again. And of course it got real dark because the rain had made it dark with clouds. And by the side of the road was a Mexican all dressed up with a white shirt and black coat and a hat. And the gun was on that side of the back seat. And he waved my dad down, and Dad asked him what he wanted. He could hardly speak English, but he wanted a ride into Trinidad.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad said, "Well, get in." He got in right by the gun. And my mother was sitting in the front seat with Joe on her lap. And we 3 kids are sitting in the back with the Mexican with the gun by the side of him. And he smelled to high heaven with cheap perfume. It was, even to little kids, I can still remember that rather overpowering kind of smell that Mexican had, a mixture of body odor and
Bad tequila and whatever.
Smell a little garlic mixed in.
and so he was nice though, and of course couldn't converse with us because his English was inadequate. And we got to Trinidad, and he pulled out a bunch of bills and tried to pay my dad.
Oh.
And my dad wouldn't take any money. And he bowed and scraped and thanked us. And my mother was so thankful to the Lord that that we hadn't all been shot.
I imagine she talked about that for a while.
And so anyway, that night it was raining, so we stayed in a hotel in Trinidad. And the next morning we ate in their restaurant. And
I bet that was a treat.
oh yes, right. Of course, little kids, you don't really notice that much.
No.
It's just something to eat as far as you're concerned.
Something different.
And the
too.
amenities aren't that really important to you.
But
It-
Mama, I bet appreciate it.
Yes,
though.
right.
Mhm.
But, and, maybe Harold and Sybil were old enough to feel like they wanted to complain. I wasn't, I was just 7. And so, you know, it really didn't matter.
Right.
I really didn't know whether it was, an inconvenience or anything. And, so then we drove on into Alamosa the next day. But I wanted to tell you that driving on the plains after we left Amarillo, from Amarillo to Clayton, that was unpopulated. And you
Right.
could look out and you could see covered wagons on the roads or whatever, on the plains anyway. And you could see mirages by the dozens.
Covered wagons.
Well,
Covered
Papa-
wagons.
Horse pulled covered
Horse
wagons.
pulled
This is
wagons with covers on.
Nice.
Papa went to,
1919.
This is in 1990.
Okay.
Papa went to, Rising Star.
Uh-huh,
He and Uncle Baker,
uh-huh. They were left behind to bring the
Wagon.
farm animals.
and he was, what, 7 years old?
That was, I guess he must have been about 8 years old. And, Baker would have been about 13. They were just kids. And it took them a solid week to go from Tolosa to Rising Star. And they had with them, though, mules and a cow. Can you imagine?
No, I can't.
But you see, actually, you aren't too far removed from frontier.
Not really.
Not
Not really.
really.
But
Well,
I.
Papa was born in 1875, wasn't he?
I know.
That's less than 10 years after the Civil War.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I realize that.
Right.
Okay, so now you're up in Alamosa. Did y'all stay?
Alamosa, and Uncle George had gone up there because he had a breathing problem,
Hmm.
like an emphysema. They did not smoke. I don't know. I think the McNairs are inclined to have maybe a little lung incapacity or something. Could be. Because George's family, his namesake, Uncle Cullen's father.
You have a lung capacity.
No, I do not. The first physical I ever had, Dr. Camp says, I can't believe how much capacity you have.
Oh, really?
A few years later, he gave me one of these little blow tests in the
Uh-huh.
office, and he says, you've lost some of your capacity.
Everybody loses it, whether you're a
But
smoker or what.
I never had
But
that
of
problem.
course, if you smoke, you reduce it.
Yeah, but
But also age reduces it.
yeah,
As you grow older. When I went to Texas University when I was just barely 17, I can remember taking that lung test and they said, what capacity?
mhm.
Because, but I think some of us, I think Uncle George had smaller lungs. I think his namesake, George, that belonged to Uncle Cullen's grandson,
Mhm.
actually, had this lung problem. And they just born with smaller lungs.
Yeah, yeah. But
I think-
anyhow, when y'all got there, you
He
was there.
He was there, and he had a ranch out from town, a good-sized ranch, and you've seen pictures of the three, Daddy and Baker and George,
Mhm.
at his ranch house, and they had a nice brick house, and they had every kind of amenity out there. They had inside plumbing, and they had they had a smokehouse. They had what else did they have? They had a kind of greenhouse, and his father-in-law, Mr. Lewis, who was Swiss, did some indoor gardening type of thing.
Mm.
So they had, just a real good life,
Mhm.
and
So y'all stayed there with them.
we stayed. Well, we only stayed a couple of days.
Oh,
It was over the 4th of July, and the World War II, World War One was just over. And the July 4th was a big celebration. And of course, it was not fancy, but it was loud. They played tunes that were popular during the war, like Over There,
Right.
and songs like that. And they had a black jazz band on the back of a horse-drawn dray, if you know
Really?
what a dray is.
Yeah.
And they had this black jazz band back there.
Do you remember who it was? Anybody famous?
No,
Don't
could
know.
have been. I don't know. I don't think so.
Wow.
I want to tell you, Alamosa was next door to the little town where Jack Dempsey was brought up, where he was a youngster. Starts with an M, and I can't think of it suddenly. I find the name gone. But they're all kind of in this valley, and the Sangre de Cristi Mountains are right behind them.
I know where you're talking about. We've been through there.
What is the name of that?
Like Montrose or
like Monty or something like
yeah,
that.
right.
Is the place. And anyway, he carried mail simply because he needed an outdoor kind of job because of his lungs, supposedly. And then also it was just about a half a day of work. So he had the ranch that he also took care of. And they had a good life, actually. And I can remember the interior of their house was quite nice, a lot nicer than the average people had. And they had beautiful china and silver and glassware. And when the meals were served, they were served in the dining room. She had some woman who came and helped her, a white woman. And
didn't she have an Indian woman that helped her too?
Huh?
An Indian woman? Or
I don't remember. It seemed to me like she was a white woman that came and helped her when she did meals. But Aunt Della was a kind of precise woman, and she was all out for our meals, and she saw that everything was, served properly, and they were always proper people. Now I'll tell you, I've noticed in correspondence and letters from Uncle George that his grammar was lacking. I don't know why, but he was a very proper and precise person. And he had jobs that required, I would say, some education. And I know that all of them really started out as school teachers. And of course, your grandfather had to educate himself, even grammar school. He had to go and live in with people and do
that
chores.
was at Baird, wasn't it?
Yes, at Baird.
Papa?
Right. And so he didn't live with his family, he lived in with these people. He brought in the firewood, he started the fires in the house for them. He did all of the chores. He milked the cows, and he did everything that had to be done to get his room and board so he could go to school. And he went to school, and then he went to a normal, some kind of teacher's normal. And at first, for the first couple of years of his adult life, he taught school.
Wow. Well, I didn't know he was a teacher.
Yeah.
I never realized that.
Yes, he taught. And I have his old report cards.
You do?
Somewhere. I'll have to find them. I'll give them to you because I think you take better care of them, you and your family, than anybody else. And I'm not going to be here forever to take care of them.
Yeah, you got it.
We all are. So anyhow, how'd the trip wind up after all was said and done? I mean, y'all had
We came home, and I guess my mother was pregnant at that time, on top of everything else. Women had such endurance, and,
I know.
you know, I don't think enough credit probably has been given to the pioneer woman, who really,
You're right, they never did.
who just, had babies without proper attention, and,
Still had to do the full day's work, washing.
and cook, and wash, and.
take care of the kids.
Right, and do it all. And that there was a great expenditure of energy, I would say.
Mhm.
And they did have to have great endurance. But anyway, we came back by way of Rice. Everything seemed to start and end in Rice. I don't know why, but it seemed every trip we ever started on, but started out from Rice. And so anyway, my mother had a miscarriage over there.
Oh.
And my dad and my mother stayed there until a recovery was made. They despaired of their life for a while. And
They just what?
despaired of
Oh.
her life for a while. And so we were sent home, the children were, on the train to Terrell, and made a connection there, came into Coughlin, and my grandmother and granddaddy, Collins, met us, and my grandmother Collins just came over to the house, and the house is still there that we were leasing at that time. Do you know where Sarah Thompson lives?
Yes.
The house north of her, on that street. That's the house that we were renting because they were building a new home for us, the one that we lived in on Main Street.
And that's the one where James is going, where Mr. Lee.
Yeah, right,
Uh-huh.
right.
So we were
Oh,
there
Monday.
in a rented house, but my
North
grandmother,
of Sarah.
huh,
North of Sarah.
north of Salem. This is this house with a porch, but then we had a white picket fence around it, and it was next door to the Thompson, having had the bar shops there just before. You know the bar shops?
I didn't know him, I've heard about him.
Well, it was a Jewish family, and they were looking for a house, and that house where Sarah lives is where I was born.
Okay.
And
So y'all stayed in there by yourselves for a while?
stayed with my grandmother. My grandmother
Oh, with you.
and granddaddy just came over and
Oh.
took over our place
Oh, okay.
and took care of us until my mother and dad came home in the car.
Mm-hmm. Golly, what a trip.
No. Well, I think we all felt that was quite an accomplishment.
Yeah.
I didn't think so. I didn't think too much about it until I got older. And then I realized, I can remember going to school and they would say, how you spent your summer? And you got up and told how you spent your summer. I can remember this, that we went through a part of Amarillo where there were large estates. There were lots of wealthy people in Amarillo, and they had these magnificent big homes. And I told them about my trip to Colorado where we saw many castles out from Amarillo, Texas, where there were kings and queens.
God.
I've got this picture. We don't know who it is.
Ah,
West Texas.
is that West Texas?
Looks like it.
I don't know.
Conifer trees in the yard.
Let's see.
I've often wondered if that was.
That's the way country houses.
Oh, yeah.
Look,
But I
everybody
thought that-
scraped their yards clean. They did not mow grass.
Now this school picture has Faye Burgamy written on the back.
Huh?
Faye Burgamy is written on the back.
Oh, is it? That's at Eastland.
Okay.
They're all mixed up.
Yeah.
Now, who is this?
It says McFarland Scurry. And I want to take it and see if I can get it identified.
And this store here looks like a Kemp store.
That is a Kemp store.
I was gonna say, that looks,
Ree has that picture.
is that Reasonovers?
No,
No. Well,
Whose store
whose is
is
it?
don't know. But I've seen that picture before.
Yeah, and I don't know whose store that is.
Mhm.
I really don't know.
But I have this picture right here. And I've wondered several times if that could be on Monroe Morgan
I don't know. I just really don't know.
and maybe Eliza.
That could be
Maybe
some of
Dora.
that kids' stuff.
Maybe that's Dora and Walter.
Mhm. I don't know. I just really don't know.
But I have one like
Mhm. Those are Chinaberry trees,
that.
aren't
Mm-hmm. Umbrella trees,
Mhm.
these called.
they? You know, Kemp used to have locust trees. I don't think there are any left. But they were all down there near the school, you know, where the old Valentine place is in Kemp. All of those houses along there had giant locust trees. And in the spring, those things perfumed the whole town
I think this was out at the ranch.
with turkeys.
No, it's pigs.
It's out the range.
Here's some sheep.
Uh-huh.
Oh, this is the Edmondson farm out at the Rye. Have y'all ever been over to Rye?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we probably have, I say no.
Well,
You would
yeah,
remember it, even today, you'd feel like that you have dropped back in time. When you
Well,
get-
listen, have you been out from Rise toward where Aunt Kit used to live?
I've been out there,
Have
but
you?
it's been a long time.
Well, someday, why don't you come down and let's take some little trips around?
That would be fantastic if you
Why
ever
don't
get me
we
out of
do
camp. If you could ever get me out of camp.
What else do we have? Oh, that we,
I
whoops.
don't know who that is.
We
Okay.
we could run over to Corsicana and see if we could find Uncle George's wife and the Corsicana.
I'll look in that old bit where
Okay.
that was trying to put everything away and see where she was buried.
Right.
It may be that it's in Corsicana, but the paper, there's one piece of paper and it's got two things about it. That's how it goes.
It's a bunch of
And
pigs.
here, take a picture, take this picture.
Oh,
Oh,
that
looky
is
there,
terrible.
isn't that pretty?
That is awful. My dad had that in a.
Look at those
paperweight.
pretty eyes.
Oh, honestly, that's just ridiculous. I hated that picture.
Oh, my goodness.
Isn't that?
Well, I think it's pretty.
I do
You
too.
always put.
Uh,
That's that new house.
Who's that?
Mama and Papa and, Andy, I
yeah,
believe.
I think that's Andy.
But
That's
they have-
Uncle Joe's
Look like
house.
your mother.
I,
Look like those pictures.
oh, you think so? I don't. I never thought I looked like mother.
Here is, Mary
That
Dale
is
Papa.
Sybil and
Hey,
me
Papa.
and
Rufus Burrow.
Rufus Burrow.
But look at Mary Dale here.
Oh, this is neat. Oh, my.
Do you think I would? I don't think I.
Not the eyes,
Uh-uh.
not the eyes.
My mother had pretty eyes. She had kind of purple eyes, dark blue.
Well, with that hat.
Mm-mm.
Ain't that something?
I want a hat back.
I do too. Oh, I do.
This is Mary Dale City.
When is that?
Where is that?
Oh, I think that's kind of ridiculous. My
But
hair
here
was
is-
kind of reddish.
Here is Mary Dale out in the yard at the house. She looks like she's leaning.
Is that
on a
with
road.
Joe with a bathing suit on?
No, it's just Mary Dale.
And I posing.
You've got, looks like a rake or a hoe or something.
Leaning on her hoe.
Yeah.
How old were you there?
Here, I think I was about 14, 15. thought I was grown. Really thought I was grown.
You got anybody else there,
I
Laura?
remember that dress, I don't remember that hat you had.
Well, here is Mama, Mary Dell, James, and Bobby Jake reading there in Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
This must be when they were doing that oil well at the farm.
When they were doing what?
Drilling that oil well at the farm.
Uh-huh, right, out at the farm,
I remember that.
There's a picture of all the kids out there,
Here.
Maggie and,
Here is Jimmy and Maggie, and there's Mama, and Joe's holding somebody.
and
And
Joe
here's another
Ray.
little boy over here. Now this may be Jimmy.
Let me see that. I can
This is Joe Ray.
Oh, I remember when they did that.
Uh-huh. Do you remember a Sunday or two when we would go out there to the farm? Joe Ray was still a baby in the cradle. And, we'd meet for Sunday and Sybil and Doug would come over and we'd
Yes.
get great big sacks of ice and have iced tea
Yes.
and ice
Oh,
cream.
Yes, I do.
Here's Maggie and Joe Ray and Dell and Jimmy and one of the dogs. And here's Joe, that goat.
Yeah, there's Joe. Joe always loved animals.
And this was taken.
Joe Ray, look at him. And Maggie.
Joe Ray looks like
Oh,
he's in great wonder.
he is. He was always in wonderment.
Well, now this picture was made Thursday after Mama died, and we were living up at the
Let me
house.
see that.
And I cooked lunch.
Uh-huh.
There is Beverly and Maggie and David and Betty
Yeah, that was in
and
1955.
and Joe Ray and Jan and Dell and John and Jimmy and Papa in the middle.
And then there's one of
Whoops.
all the in-laws.
I've got it too. James was not in the picture with a kid. He had escaped and gone to town,
He had to go see $2.
probably.
James was always like Andy. He always had some of the fish to fry. Somewhere else.
Do you have anything on Molly Langham?
Molly Langham, no, I haven't, practically nothing, because Betty took practically all of Molly Langham, except there was a picture that,
I've got a picture.
well, Don took a picture. He, the picture he took was real cute with sort of frameless glasses or little, I am not sure that it's Molly. It has Molly on it. But I think it's Emily Langham. But he was very taken with it, and he took it to have it copied. He and Betty think that they would like to write a book about Molly.
Oh, I've got a picture of her, and I used to have the dress that she had on.
Well, this is not in that dress. This is
Betty Jane.
No, is that Betty or is it Dell?
Betty Jane.
Well, I'm going to turn this off. It's